Hey you! Thanks for stopping by! I wasn't planning on doing another disturbing manga review so soon. It hasn't even been a month since my last video. Today's video is going to be different from my usual manga reviews, because I will be discussing the true story it is based on. It's also going to be very disturbing. More disturbing than Pet Humiliation Diary and Slave Contract combined. This video is about the manga based on the Junko Furuta case. For those who don't know, it's an infamous case from Japan about a high school girl who was abducted and tortured by 4 high schoolers. I'll get into the details later on. It's no exaggeration when I say the details are so graphic that I can't get into everything, and I will be careful how I describe certain scenes. It's one of the most disturbing true crime cases out there. The manga is called Shin Gendai Ryoukiden by Uzuka Waita. I'm sorry if I said that wrong. If that sounds familiar, that's because this is the same mangaka who wrote Mai-chan's Daily Life, which I plan to review someday. Uzuka Waita is known for writing eroguro manga, or stories about young girls being tortured. He wasn't the right person to tell a story based on the Junko Furuta case, but I will get into that later. This manga is a collection of short stories, but I will only be talking about the Junko Furuta one. Okay, now that I've explained the backstory, let's get to the review. This is Shin Gendai Ryoukiden. The story begins with 17-year-old high school student Yoko Tomioka riding her bike home from work so she can watch her favorite TV show. It takes place in November 1988, just like the real story. A guy on a moped comes up from behind and pushes her off her bike. How rude. A guy who is only known as Juvenile A comes over and offers to escort her home, since there are bad people out at night. Later that night, we see a bloodied Yoko begging Juvenile A and his 3 friends to let her go. Juvenile A says they have connections with the Yakuza, so she has to do what she's told. The other boys are simply known as Juvenile B, Juvenile C, and Juvenile D. They make Yoko undress and assault her in various ways, including shoving a bottle inside her. This would go on for the next 40 days. In the next chapter, Yoko is being held captive in the home of one of the juveniles. His mother asks how long she's going to stay, only to be told by the son to F off. 5 days have passed. The juvenile instructs Yoko to call her parents to tell them she ran away and not to look for her. Every day she is essayed day and night. One day, while Juvenile A and C are sleeping, Yoko uses this opportunity to call for help. But before anyone can pick up, the call is interrupted by a very angry Juvenile A. They proceed to viciously beat her. In the next chapter, Yoko begs them to let her go home. Juvenile A asks how she's going to explain her absence to her parents. She tries to come up with an excuse to tell her parents, but he says her lies would be exposed. There's nothing she can say to explain how she survived with no money, and if they let her go, she would tell the cops. To punish her further, they douse Yoko's foot in lighter oil and set it on fire. Then they set her hands on fire as well. The boys watch in amusement as Yoko desperately puts out the fire. Due to her injuries, she can't stand up. Yoko tells herself, quote, "I'll go home someday for sure. I'll get my peaceful life back for sure," unquote. Followed by text that says, "At the time, she believed that." In the next chapter, Yoko spills a glass of water due to being in extreme pain, and she vomits, enraging the 3 juveniles who begin to punch and kick her. One shoves fireworks inside her and lights it, causing her extreme pain down there. They beat her again until her face is bloody and swollen. The final chapter begins with Yoko lying helplessly on the bed. It's January and she spent the new year alone. One of the things I like about the art is that it shows how miserable Yoko is as the story progresses. I don't know how to describe it. It's like she loses the brightness in her eyes. She lays on the floor unresponsive. There's a close-up of Yoko's face I find haunting. I can't show it because it's too disturbing. Her face is bloody and her eyes are empty. I wish I could show it, but I don't want to take any risks with YouTube. They get angry and beat her some more. Finally, Yoko responds by telling them to just end her life. They beat her worse than before. This lasts for 2 hours. Yoko finally passes away from her injuries. The juveniles wrap up her body and walk away from the bloody room. Later, her body is discovered in a barrel filled with concrete. The final panel is a picture of a happy Yoko with her friends. That's how it ends. We know her body is found later, but it doesn't show the 4 juveniles being punished. Maybe Uzuka Waita wants the reader to imagine our own ending for them. I think they got the electric chair. That's not what the real juveniles received. Speaking of the real story, you might be wondering how much of the manga is true. Well, most of it is true, from how Junko was abducted to how they disposed of her body and the various forms of torture she endured. For 40 days, she was beaten, essayed, burned, mutilated, and forced to do humiliating acts. And this happened in the home of one of the juveniles. No exaggeration, the events in the manga don't cover everything that happened to Junko. Like I said at the beginning of the video, some of the details are too graphic to say in this video. You can look up the details online if you want. While the manga doesn't show what happened after she died, they were caught after 2 of the culprits were arrested for kidnapping and assaulting another woman. Yes, they had a history of kidnapping and essaying random women. The cops initially suspected them of being behind the murder of another woman and hinted at it. The guy assumed they were talking about Junko and confessed to where her body was located. It's scary to think they would have gotten away with it, since at the time they weren't even considered suspects in her disappearance. At first, their identities were kept hidden due to them being juveniles, but given the severity of their crimes, their names were leaked to the media. Each boy received a different sentence from 9 to 20 years. To my knowledge, all 4 of them are free, and many people, including myself, are not happy, but that's a different topic. As I said in the beginning, Uzuka Waita was not the right person to make a manga based on Junko Furuta's story. He's known for making disturbing stories that, let's be honest, people get off to. You know what I mean, a sick pleasure. Let me know your thoughts. Maybe this is an unpopular opinion. Feel free to disagree. As usual with my manga reviews, I read comments on Goodreads, the good, the bad, and the ugly. This manga had more bad reviews. There are some 1-star ratings. Let me read a few. Can Waita Uzuka just be normal for 5 minutes? What the hell? This manga was based off of a... What the hell? This manga was based off of a poor girl who went through a lot of pain. Seriously, this is disgusting. It's super gross that someone would make a manga based off of Junko Furuta, a girl who suffered for a long time. What the F is wrong with some people? Like seriously, what the goddamn F is wrong with some people? This author/artist already has a thing for girl, as evidenced by his other works. But the biggest part of this manga story collection is based off of the true story of Junko Furuta. And for all the horror that poor girl went through, the fact that this a-hole who created this manga is profiting off of her torture should be giving anyone pause. How anyone could give this manga a good rating is beyond me. Of course, some did give it a 4 or 5-star rating, but those were at the bottom with no likes. If you like this video, consider subscribing, liking, or sharing. Let me know your thoughts on this manga in the comments. Thanks for stopping by.